My girlfriend laughed about cheating on me, saying I'd never suspect a thing, so I quietly left and let her life fall apart without me. Tuesday started like any other. I'm a 27-year-old software developer working for a startup, so my days are usually long and packed. I've been pulling late nights for weeks trying to hit a ridiculous deadline for a project that kept getting delayed because management couldn't make up their minds. My girlfriend, Kay, had been supportive, or so I thought. She'd always tell me how proud she was that I worked so hard and that we were building something together for our future. Hearing that kept me going most days, even when I felt completely drained. Kay and I had been together for almost 3 years. We lived in a small apartment downtown, not fancy, but cozy. She worked part-time as a waitress and was finishing her degree. Between her finals and my workload, things had been a bit strained, but I figured that was normal for any couple. We'd argue here and there, but I thought it was just regular relationship stuff. I never once questioned her loyalty. Why would I? She always seemed devoted, even if we'd been distant lately. That day, I had a rare early finish at work. My boss canceled an afternoon meeting, and since I'd already put in more than enough hours for the week, I decided to call it a day. I thought, why not surprise Kay? I swung by her favorite Chinese takeout spot and grabbed her go-to order, sweet and sour chicken, fried rice, and egg rolls. I figured we could have a quiet night together for once, maybe watch a movie or just hang out like we used to before life got so hectic. I parked my car outside the building, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. It was one of those rare moments where I felt like I was actually doing something right, not for work, but for us. The walk up to our apartment felt like a relief, like I was leaving the stress of the office behind for a night. I was looking forward to seeing her smile when I showed up with her favorite food. But as soon as I reached our floor, something felt off. The door to our apartment was slightly ajar. At first, I thought maybe she was airing the place out or forgot to close it all the way. Kay could be forgetful sometimes, especially when she was juggling school, work, and her part-time shifts. But still, it was weird. My heart skipped a beat, and I hesitated for a second before stepping inside. I walked in quietly, my ears immediately picking up voices, hers, clear as day, and another voice, male. My first thought was, who the hell is that? But then I calmed myself down. Maybe it was one of her classmates or a friend from work. I didn't want to jump to conclusions and look like an idiot for assuming the worst. Still, something about the tone of their conversation made my stomach churn. They weren't just chatting, they were laughing. Her laugh, but not the kind I was used to hearing. It was sharper, almost mocking. I set the takeout bags on the counter as quietly as I could and crept down the short hallway that led to the living room. Their voices got louder. At first, I couldn't make out what they were saying, but then I heard her clear as day. He has no idea. My chest tightened. My brain immediately started trying to rationalize. Maybe she's talking about something else. It doesn't mean what I think it does. But then she kept going, her voice dripping with amusement. He works all the time, so it's easy. He doesn't even notice when I'm out with you. Plus, I've got him wrapped around my finger. Even if he did notice, I could talk my way out of it. I stopped breathing. My body felt frozen in place, but my mind was racing a mile a minute. Was this real? Was I actually hearing this? My hands balled into fists, my nails digging into my palms so hard it hurt. I didn't know if I wanted to cry, scream, or punch something. The guy laughed, a low, smug sound that made my skin crawl. As long as it works out for us, who cares? He said. It's not like you're going to get caught. Her response? Another laugh, this one even more condescending. Exactly. He's so clueless it's almost sad how easy it's been. And the best part? He thinks I'm stressed about school and that's why I've been distant. It's pathetic. I felt like I was going to throw up. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they might hear it from the other room. I wanted to burst in, to confront her, to scream at both of them for making me feel like such a fool. But I couldn't move. It was like my body had shut down completely. I stood there for what felt like forever, just listening to them. The guy said something about how they should be careful, but she brushed him off, saying I'd never suspect a thing. That was the moment I realized I didn't know her at all. This person sitting on the couch, laughing at me behind my back, wasn't the woman I thought I'd been building a life with. She was a stranger, someone I'd apparently never really known. The sound of a bottle clinking snapped me out of my daze. They were drinking, probably out of the wine glasses we bought together on a date night. The anger started bubbling up again, but this time it felt different. It wasn't just anger, it was heartbreak, betrayal, humiliation, all rolled into one giant, suffocating wave. I knew if I walked into that room, I wouldn't be able to control myself. I'd say or do something I might regret. So instead, I turned around. I walked back down the hallway, grabbed the takeout bags, and quietly slipped out of the apartment. I made sure to close the door softly so they wouldn't know I'd been there. As I walked down the stairs, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold onto the bags. My vision blurred, and I felt like I was suffocating, but I kept moving. I got into my car and just drove. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. I couldn't face her, not yet. I don't remember much about the drive. It was like I was on autopilot, just going through the motions of steering, braking, and accelerating without really thinking about where I was headed. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and my chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. I ended up at a friend's place, not someone Kay knew, which was important. I didn't want her finding me. When I got there, I must have looked like a total wreck because my buddy didn't even ask questions. He just opened the door and let me crash on his couch. I think I mumbled something about needing a place to stay, but I didn't go into details. I couldn't. The words just wouldn't come out. Instead, I laid there, staring at the ceiling, my mind running in a million different directions. I kept replaying everything I'd heard in the apartment, her words, his laugh, the clink of that stupid wine bottle. It was like a broken record that I couldn't shut off. Part of me wanted to go back, kick the door open, and confront them both. But the other part of me, the part that was still in shock, knew it wouldn't change anything. She'd cheated. She'd lied. And she laughed about it like it was some big joke. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My body was sore from tension, and my head was pounding from lack of sleep. But I knew what I had to do. I grabbed my phone and started blocking her everywhere, phone number, social media, email, even Venmo. Anything I could think of. I didn't want her to have any way to contact me. I didn't leave a note or send a text explaining why. I figured she'd figure it out soon enough. A part of me wanted her to feel the same confusion and emptiness I felt when I overheard her talking about me like I was nothing. Let her sit in the silence and wonder what happened. I didn't owe her anything, not after what she'd done. The first day after blocking her was chaos. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts from unknown numbers. I didn't have to guess who it was. She'd clearly started trying to reach me from different phones. The messages were all over the place. At first, they were casual, like, "Hey, are you okay? I haven't heard from you." Then they turned apologetic, "If I did something wrong, please let me fix it." By the end of the day, they were downright frantic. "Where are you? Please, we need to talk." I ignored every single one. She could have called 1,000 times, and I still wouldn't have picked up. What was the point? I'd already heard everything I needed to know. Her excuses didn't matter. Her apology didn't matter. Nothing she said could undo what I'd heard with my own ears. By the second day, the messages started coming through mutual friends. I got texts like, "Kay's freaking out. She's really worried about you, and she said you're not responding, and she doesn't know why. Is everything okay?" I still didn't respond. I wasn't ready to tell anyone what had happened. It was too fresh, too humiliating. The thought of saying the words out loud, "My girlfriend was cheating on me," made me feel sick. About a week later, I got the next piece of the puzzle. A mutual friend, completely oblivious to the situation, mentioned something that made my blood run cold. The guy Kay had been with wasn't some random classmate or coworker of hers. He was one of mine. I couldn't believe it at first. It didn't make sense. Why would she cheat on me with someone from my office? Then I started putting the pieces together, the way she'd casually mention his name in conversation, like it was no big deal. How she suggested we invite him out for drinks once, saying, "He's cool. You'd like him." At the time, I didn't think much of it. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? But now it all made sense. The study sessions that went late into the night, the times she claimed she was too tired to hang out after work, all the excuses I'd brushed off because I didn't want to seem paranoid. They weren't harmless coincidences. They were lies. What made it worse was finding out that this guy had a girlfriend, not just some casual fling, a serious, long-term girlfriend who also worked in our office. So it wasn't just me Kay was betraying. They were both playing this sick, twisted game behind their partners' backs, and I'd been too blind to see it. I thought about confronting him at work, but I couldn't decide if it was worth it. What would I even say? "Hey, I know you've been screwing my girlfriend. Care to explain?" It sounded ridiculous. Besides, the thought of dragging our personal drama into the office made me cringe. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who brings his messy personal life to work. But at the same time, I couldn't just let him get away with it. My girlfriend laughed about cheating on me, saying I'd never suspect a thing, so I quietly left and let her life fall apart without me. The next day, I called in sick. I needed time to figure out what to do. I spent most of the day pacing around my friend's apartment, going back and forth in my head. Part of me wanted to burn everything down, confront Kay, confront the guy, tell everyone what they'd done. But the other part of me just wanted to move on, to put this whole mess behind me and never look back. By the end of the day, I still didn't have a plan, but one thing was clear, I wasn't ready to forgive or forget. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The fallout from everything was worse than I expected. By the second week, Kay had completely lost it. The phone calls and texts from unknown numbers kept pouring in, and I had to silence my phone just to get through the day. I'd never seen this side of her before, desperate, relentless, almost pathetic. She went from pleading for a chance to explain to outright blaming me for not giving her a chance to fix things. She even started showing up at places she thought I might be. I heard through mutual friends that she'd gone by my office a couple of times, crying in the lobby and asking to see me. Thankfully, security sent her away, but the rumors started circulating at work. People asked if everything was okay, and I just brushed them off, saying, "Personal stuff. Nothing major." I didn't want anyone knowing what had actually happened. I wasn't ready to be the guy everyone pitied or gossiped about. What made it harder was that some of our friends didn't understand why I'd gone completely silent on her. They texted me, saying, "Kay's a wreck. You should at least hear her out," or, "It's not fair to ghost her like this." Fair? Was it fair that she laughed about cheating on me? Was it fair that she turned me into some clueless fool behind my back? I didn't owe her a single word, but it felt like no one else got that. The worst part, though, was realizing how deeply this betrayal had burrowed into every part of my life. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see her face or hear her voice saying, "He has no idea." I couldn't focus at work either. I'd be in meetings, staring at my laptop, completely zoned out while everyone else discussed quarterly goals or project deadlines. My coworkers must have thought I was losing it. Then there was him, the guy. The one she'd been cheating with. Every time I saw him at the office, my blood boiled. He acted like nothing had happened, like he wasn't the reason my life had gone off the rails. He'd walk around laughing with coworkers, cracking jokes, and just being his usual arrogant self. It was infuriating. At one point, I started planning what I'd say if I confronted him. I pictured myself walking up to his desk, slamming my hands down, and saying, "I know what you did, you piece of crap." But every time I got close, I stopped myself. It wasn't because I was scared, trust me, I wanted to rip into him, but because I knew it wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't fix what Kay had done or undo the humiliation I felt. If anything, it would just make me look like the crazy one. Instead, I started digging. I wanted to know everything about this guy, who he was, what made him think he could get away with this, and most importantly, if there was a way to expose him without dragging myself into the mud. That's when I found out about his girlfriend. Turns out, she worked in a different department at our company. I'd never met her before, but from what I heard, she was a nice girl, quiet, sweet, and completely unaware of what her boyfriend was doing behind her back. It hit me like a punch to the gut. She was in the same position I was, completely oblivious to the betrayal happening right under her nose. For a brief moment, I thought about reaching out to her. But how do you even start that conversation? "Hey, your boyfriend's cheating on you with my girlfriend. By the way, just thought you should know." It felt wrong, like I'd just be adding to her pain. So I decided to keep my distance, at least for the time being. Meanwhile, Kay wasn't giving up. She showed up at my friend's place one evening, pounding on the door and screaming my name. My buddy looked at me like, "What do you want me to do?" I told him to let her in. I figured it was time to face her, even if I wasn't ready. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. Her mascara was smudged, her hair was a mess, and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She looked broken, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. She'd done this to herself. She started talking, rambling, about how much she loved me and how sorry she was. She said it was a mistake, that she wasn't thinking clearly, that the guy didn't mean anything. But the more she talked, the more it sounded like she was trying to manipulate me. She wasn't owning up to what she did. She was just trying to downplay it. "It wasn't like that," she said, her voice shaking. "I never meant to hurt you." I let her go on for a while, mostly because I wanted to see if she'd slip up and admit the truth. She didn't. Instead, she kept throwing out excuses, saying things like, "I was confused," and, "You've been so busy with work, I didn't know how to talk to you." Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I cut her off mid-sentence and said, "I heard everything." Her face went completely pale. She froze, her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't believe what I'd just said. "I was there," I continued. "That night. I came home early, and I heard you. I heard you laughing about me. Calling me pathetic. Saying I was clueless. So don't stand here and lie to me." She stammered, trying to say something, but no words came out. For the first time, she had nothing to say. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. "We're done," I said. "There's nothing left to say." She tried to rush toward me, but my friend stepped between us. I think she realized in that moment that there was no fixing this. She broke down right there in the hallway, sobbing and begging me to reconsider. I didn't. I just walked away, leaving her behind. After that confrontation, things got quiet. Kay stopped trying to contact me, or at least I stopped noticing if she did. I blocked her everywhere and told our mutual friends to stop relaying her messages. Some of them understood and backed off, but a couple kept pushing, saying things like, "She's really sorry, man," or, "Don't you think you should at least talk to her?" No. I didn't. What was the point? I'd heard her clear as day, laughing about me, calling me clueless. That wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. That was who she was. There was nothing to fix, no apology that would erase what she'd done. My girlfriend laughed about cheating on me, saying I'd never suspect a thing, so I quietly left and let her life fall apart without me. At work, the situation was harder to ignore. The guy, her fling, was still there, walking around like he hadn't blown up my life. Every time I saw him, it took everything in me not to call him out. He avoided me like the plague, which was honestly the smartest decision he could have made. If he had the nerve to say anything, I probably would have lost it. But I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Seeing him every day felt like a constant reminder of what had happened, like a wound that wouldn't heal because someone kept poking at it. I started thinking about quitting, about finding a new job just to get away from him and all the memories tied to that office. Then I remembered something. Why should I be the one to leave? I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd worked hard to get where I was, and I wasn't going to let some entitled jerk and his terrible decisions push me out. If anyone deserved to go, it was him. So I started paying attention, not in a creepy or obsessive way, but just enough to figure out how I could handle the situation without it backfiring on me. I didn't have to dig too deep to find what I needed. Word travels fast in offices, and it turns out his girlfriend, who also worked in the building, was starting to catch on to his behavior. I didn't know her personally, but I felt for her. She was in the same boat I'd been in, completely blindsided by someone she trusted. I didn't have to do much to set things in motion. A few casual mentions to the right people about how things weren't always as they seemed, and the office gossip machine took care of the rest. Within a week, his girlfriend knew everything. She confronted him, and let's just say it didn't end well for him. By the end of the week, he was gone, fired for violating company policies and trashing his own reputation in the process. I won't lie, there was a cold satisfaction in watching it all play out. I didn't feel like a hero or anything, but it felt good to know that he wouldn't get away with what he'd done. It wasn't just about me, it was about everyone else he'd hurt with his selfishness. As for Kay, she faded out of my life like a bad dream. After the confrontation at my friend's place, she stopped trying to reach me. Maybe she realized it was pointless, or maybe she moved on to someone else. I didn't care. I wasn't keeping tabs on her, and I wasn't interested in what she was doing. She didn't exist to me anymore. At first, I thought it would take forever to feel normal again. I thought I'd be haunted by her betrayal, replaying it in my head over and over. But surprisingly, it didn't take long for the fog to lift. A few weeks after everything went down, I woke up one morning and realized I felt lighter, like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying had been lifted. Looking back, I could see all the red flags I'd ignored, the nights she'd come home late with flimsy excuses, the times she pulled away when I tried to get close, the little lies that didn't seem like a big deal at the time but added up to something much bigger. I'd been so caught up in the idea of us, of what I thought we had, that I refused to see the cracks. The weeks after everything settled were strange. For the first time in years, I was alone, not in the physical sense, but emotionally. There was no Kay texting me, no plans to make around her schedule, and no stress about trying to balance her needs with my work. It was just me. At first, it was uncomfortable, like I didn't know what to do with myself. But gradually, I started to realize how much better life felt without the constant weight of her presence. Work became my main focus again. Without the distraction of her betrayal clouding my mind, I threw myself into projects and started climbing out of the mental fog. My performance improved, and my boss even mentioned how I seemed more on top of things lately. I didn't explain why. I wasn't about to share my personal life with coworkers, but I nodded and kept moving forward. Still, trust became a challenge. Every time I met someone new or interacted with friends, I caught myself second-guessing their intentions. It wasn't fair to them, but it was a reflex I couldn't turn off. I kept thinking, if Kay could betray me so easily, what's stopping anyone else? It took time, but I reminded myself that not everyone is like her. Some people are actually decent and capable of being honest. One of the biggest surprises was how supportive my friends were once they learned the truth. I didn't plan on telling anyone at first. It felt humiliating to admit I'd been cheated on and laughed at behind my back. But one night, a close friend pressed me for details, and I finally broke down and told him everything. To my relief, he didn't pity me or mock me. He just listened, offered some advice, and reminded me that what happened wasn't my fault. "You're better off without her, man," he said. "She didn't deserve you." Hearing that didn't magically fix everything, but it helped. Slowly, I started sharing bits and pieces of the story with others, and every time I did, it felt like a weight was being lifted. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't the first person to go through something like this. That realization gave me a weird kind of comfort. As for Kay, I never heard from her again after the day she showed up at my friend's place. I don't know if she gave up, moved on, or just decided to focus on someone else. Honestly, I didn't care. She was out of my life, and that was all that mattered. The guy at work was a different story. Even though he got fired, his presence lingered for a while. People gossiped about him for weeks, and every time his name came up, it was a reminder of what had happened. But eventually, even that faded. New office drama replaced the old, and his name became just another footnote in the company's history. By then, I'd made my peace with it. He wasn't worth my energy. Looking back, the whole experience was a wake-up call. For years, I'd been pouring my energy into a relationship that wasn't as strong as I thought it was. I'd ignored the red flags, made excuses for her behavior, and convinced myself that we were fine because I didn't want to face the truth. Losing her hurt, but it also forced me to reevaluate what I wanted and deserved in a partner. I've started taking things slower now, whether it's with relationships, friendships, or even work. I'm learning to value myself more and set boundaries when people cross the line. It's not always easy, and I'm still figuring things out. But I'm getting there. Trusting someone again will take time, but I'm okay with that. What matters most is that I've moved on from the pain and learned from it. I'm not the same person I was when I walked into that apartment and heard her voice. I'm stronger, more self-aware, and determined not to let anyone treat me like that again. This whole experience taught me that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best lessons. I'll never forget what happened, but I also won't let it define me. Life goes on, and so do I.